I never imagined my golden years would begin with betrayal. For 37 years, I'd lived in the same two-story colonial on Maple Street. The house where I'd raised Riley, where his father Tom and I had celebrated countless Christmases, birthdays, and ordinary Tuesday evenings that somehow became the memories I treasured most. Every creaking floorboard held a story. The stain on the kitchen counter from Riley's 7th grade science experiment. The height marks on the doorframe tracking his growth from age 3 to 18. The garden where Tom proposed to me on a September evening that smelled like rain and possibility. After Tom passed 5 years ago, the house became both my sanctuary and my burden. Too big for one person, perhaps, but filled with a lifetime I wasn't ready to abandon. Riley had always been my pride. A successful financial consultant with a corner office downtown, married to Taylor, a real estate agent with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. They lived 40 minutes away in a modern townhouse with granite countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows. Our relationship had been cordial. Sunday dinners once a month. Birthday calls that lasted exactly 7 minutes. The usual dance of adult children with busy lives. But 6 months ago, something shifted. It started small the way poison always does. Riley began asking questions about the house. Questions that seemed innocent at first, wrapped in concern like a gift hiding a trap. "Mom, have you thought about downsizing?" he'd asked over coffee one Sunday afternoon. His fingers drummed against the kitchen table, Tom's table, the one we'd bought at an estate sale when we were too young and too broke to buy new furniture. This place must be expensive to maintain. I'd laughed it off, pouring more cream into his coffee the way he liked it. "I managed just fine, sweetheart." "But wouldn't a nice apartment be easier?" Taylor had chimed in, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes calculating. "You know, something with maintenance included. No more worrying about furnaces or roof repairs." I'd changed the subject to Riley's work, to the weather, to anything else. But the questions kept coming. Then the visits increased. Riley and Taylor would drop by unannounced. I'd be in my garden, dirt under my fingernails the way Tom always said made me most beautiful, and I'd hear their car pull into the driveway. Taylor's sharp eyes would assess every room like she was already measuring for new furniture. She'd run her manicured fingers along the banister, peer into closets' open cabinets, as if she had every right. "This kitchen is so outdated, Olivia," she'd say, her nose wrinkling. "When was the last time you updated these appliances? 1995. They work perfectly fine. And the heating system, it must cost a fortune to heat a place this size in winter." I'd smile politely, offer tea, count the minutes until they left. But I felt scrutinized in my own home, like a specimen under glass, like something to be assessed, appraised, and ultimately discarded. "We're just worried about you, Olivia," Taylor would say, her voice dripping with false concern. "A woman your age all alone in this big house. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" I was 68, not 90. I still gardened, drove myself to book club every Thursday evening at Helen Pritchard's house, volunteered at the Maple Street Library twice a week, teaching seniors, some older than me, how to use computers and navigate the internet. My doctor had given me a clean bill of health just 3 months ago. Blood pressure perfect, cholesterol excellent, memory sharp as ever, but they spoke to me like I was already senile, already helpless, already 1 foot in the grave. The phone calls became more frequent, too. Riley would call late at night, his voice tight with what he called concern, but what sounded increasingly like impatience. "Mom, have you considered a reverse mortgage? It could give you extra income." "I don't need extra income, Riley. My pension and savings are more than adequate." "Have you updated your will recently?" "Why would I need to update my will?" "Do you have a healthcare proxy power of attorney documents?" Questions that felt less like care and more like inventory, like he was taking stock of assets that weren't his to count. Then came that Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in my garden, deadheading the last of the autumn roses, the yellow ones Tom had planted for our 25th anniversary. The afternoon sun was warm on my shoulders, and I was thinking about what to make for dinner when I heard the car pull up. Riley's silver Audi. Just one car. No Taylor this time. He climbed out alone, and something cold settled in my stomach at the expression on his face. Not concern, not worry. Something harder. Something final. His jaw was set. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. He wore his work suit, the navy one he saved for important meetings, but his tie was loose, and his hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it. "Mom, we need to talk." He didn't wait for an invitation. Just walked past me into the house, his shoes leaving dirt marks on the hardwood floors I'd polished just that morning. I followed him inside, wiping soil from my hands with the gardening towel I kept by the back door. My heart was racing. That maternal instinct that never quite leaves you, the one that knows when something is terribly wrong with your child. "Riley, what is it? Are you okay?" as Taylor. He stood in my living room where I'd rocked him as a colicky baby at 2 a.m, where he'd opened Christmas presents and posed for prom photos and told us he'd gotten into Columbia. And the words came out flat, rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in the car on the way over. "I sold your house to pay for our vacation. You have 1 day to pack your things." The world tilted. I actually gripped the back of Tom's old armchair to steady myself. The brown leather one with the reading light attached, worn smooth on the armrests where his hands had rested every evening for 30 years. "You turn, what say? Taylor and I have been planning a trip to the Maldives for our 10th anniversary. He said it like it was obvious, like it was reasonable, like I should understand. "We deserve it after everything we've been through. The sale closes tomorrow. The new owners want to move in by the weekend." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My mind was scrambling, trying to process words that made no sense together. Sold, my house, vacation, 1 day. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Mom." Riley continued, his eyes finally meeting mine, and I saw a stranger looking back at me. "We found you a nice assisted living facility. Sunset Gardens. 1 bedroom, all utilities included. You'll be much happier there. Safer." Safer. That word again. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw someone I didn't recognize. When had this happened? When had my boy, my sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them bouquets, become this cold, calculating man standing in my home telling me he'd stolen it from under me? But here's what Riley didn't know. What he couldn't possibly have known in his greed and his arrogance. The house wasn't actually in my name anymore. I smiled. A small, quiet smile that made him falter for just a moment. "Is that so?" I said softly. "Well, then I suppose you'd better tell me which assisted living facility you've chosen." Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, maybe. But then his jaw tightened again. He pulled a brochure from his jacket pocket. Trifold glossy with photos of elderly people playing checkers and smiling at cameras. "Sunset Gardens Senior Living." He placed it on the coffee table between us like he was serving me with legal papers. "I've already put down the deposit. First month's rent. They're expecting you on Friday." "How thoughtful." "Mom, I know this is hard. Do you—" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Do you know what's hard? Riley Hard is being widowed at 63. Hard is learning to sleep in a bed that feels too big. Hard is figuring out how to fix a leaking faucet when the man who always did it is gone. Hard is—" My voice cracked and I stopped. I would not cry. Not in front of him. Not now. Riley had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I know losing Dad was difficult. That's why we think I interrupted. "This is Taylor's idea, isn't it? It's our decision. We're married. We make decisions together. About my life, about my home, without consulting me." "We're consulting you now." "No, Riley, you're informing me. There's a difference." He sighed the way you'd sigh at a stubborn child who won't eat their vegetables. "The movers will be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. to help you pack. Just bring personal items, clothes, photos, medications. The furniture stays with the house. The buyers are purchasing it furnished." My furniture, Tom's chair, our wedding china, the antique dresser that had belonged to my grandmother. "I see. Mom, please don't make this into a big dramatic thing. This is for your own good." For my own good. As if I were 5 years old instead of 68. As if I couldn't possibly know what was good for me. Riley checked his watch, a Rolex I didn't remember him owning. "I have to get back to the office. If you need help packing, Taylor can come by tomorrow morning." "That won't be necessary." "Okay. Well," he shifted his weight suddenly, looking like he wanted to escape, like he'd delivered bad news and couldn't wait to be free of the discomfort. "I'll call you tomorrow to check in." He moved toward the door, then paused. For just a second, I saw something in his face, a flicker of the boy he used to be. His hand reached out as if to touch my shoulder, but then dropped. "I love you, Mom," he said quietly. And then he was gone. I stood in my living room for exactly 20 minutes, listening to the grandfather clock Tom had restored ticking in the corner. My hands were trembling. My chest felt tight. Had my own son really just tried to sell my house without my permission? Had he really stood here and told me to pack my belongings like I was being evicted from my own life? The audacity of it was almost impressive. But then something Tom used to say drifted back to me. Something he'd repeat whenever we faced a challenge. Don't panic, Liv. Think. Evidence wins cases emotions lose them. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. Panic wouldn't help me now. I needed to understand what had actually happened, what Riley thought he'd accomplished. Because one thing was certain, he believed he'd succeeded. He'd walked out of here confident, almost smug, certain that come Friday, I'd be living in a one-bedroom facility while he and Taylor sipped cocktails on a beach paid for with my stolen equity. I pulled out my laptop. Yes, I owned a laptop, despite what my son seemed to think about my technological capabilities, and began searching for property records. It took me 40 minutes and 3 phone calls to the county clerk's office, but I finally reached someone who could access the information. A young woman named Jennifer with a kind voice and surprising patience for explaining property law to someone she probably assumed was computer illiterate. Ma'am, according to our records, 247 Maple Street is held in a living trust. The Hartwell Family Trust established in 2021. You're listed as the trustee. I thanked her and hung up a grim smile touching my lips. Of course, Tom and I had set up the trust 3 years before he died following our estate attorney's advice. Sarah Morrison, Tom's former law school roommate, had insisted we do it. It protects the house, Liv, avoids probate, gives you complete control while you're alive, and when the time comes, everything transfers seamlessly to Riley without the courts getting involved. The house wasn't in my name. It was in the trust's name with me as the controlling trustee and Riley as the beneficiary upon my death. Upon my death, not before. Riley couldn't sell it without my signature, without my consent, without my explicit notarized approval as trustee. But he'd tried anyway. Had he forged documents? Had he lied to a buyer? Or was this all an elaborate bluff to frighten me into signing the house over? I needed to know more. I needed evidence. That evening I did something I'd never done before. I called Riley's colleague Robert Chen, whom I'd met several times at company events over the years. Robert had always been kind to me, respectful, asked about my garden, remembered Tom's name. If anyone might give me honest information, it would be him. Mrs. Hartwell, what a pleasant surprise, Robert said when he answered, though I could hear wariness in his voice. It was 7:30 on a Tuesday. He was probably at home with his family. Robert, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I kept my voice steady. Has Riley been acting strangely at work lately? Money troubles, unusual behavior, anything? There was a long pause. Too long. Mrs. Hartwell, I probably shouldn't say this. His voice dropped lower. But Riley took out a significant loan last month. He told the partners it was for a business investment, but there's been talk. Some people think he's in over his head financially. My stomach dropped. How significant? 6 figures, and between you and me, he's been distracted. Missing deadlines. His biggest client, Marston Industries, threatened to leave last week over mismanaged investments. Mrs. Hartwell, if he loses that client, he'll likely be terminated. I thanked Robert and ended the call, my mind racing. Riley was in financial trouble. Serious trouble. And instead of coming to me for help, instead of being honest with his mother, he'd decided to steal my home. But why the vacation story? Why the Maldives? Unless... I opened my laptop again and navigated to Facebook, another thing my son assumed I couldn't do. Taylor's page was public, a carefully curated highlight reel of designer handbags, restaurant check-ins, and inspirational quotes about manifesting abundance. I scrolled back through the last 6 months and found what I was looking for. Dozens of posts about their upcoming dream vacation, photos of resort brochures, countdown posts, only 120 days until paradise. Can't wait to swim with manta rays, already planning what to pack for the Maldives. They'd been planning this for months, building it up, broadcasting it to their 800 Facebook friends and 1,500 Instagram followers, creating expectations, making promises. And now they needed money to make it happen. My money. My house. I sat back feeling something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. This wasn't just about financial desperation. This was about image, about keeping up appearances, about Taylor's perfect Instagram life. They'd decided my home, my security, my memories were worth less than vacation photos and social media likes. That's when the plan began to form. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't hide. I wouldn't move into some assisted living facility while they sipped Mai Tais on a beach paid for with my stolen equity. No, I would do something else entirely. I would let them think they'd won. I would play the confused, helpless old woman they clearly believed I was. And while they were busy congratulating themselves, I would gather every piece of evidence I needed to prove what they'd tried to do. And then I would make sure they faced real consequences. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd hoped I'd never need. Sarah Morrison. The voice answered crisp and professional, even at 8 p.m. Sarah, it's Olivia Hartwell. I need your help. My voice was steady now, fueled by something I hadn't felt in years. Pure, focused determination. My son just tried to steal my house. Sarah Morrison arrived at my house the next morning at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying a leather briefcase that had probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and an expression that meant business. I'd known Sarah for over 40 years since she and Tom studied together at Georgetown Law. Back then, she'd been a fierce young woman with wild curly hair and a fire in her belly about justice. Now, at 67, her hair was steel gray and cut in a sharp bob. Her suits were impeccable, and she'd built a reputation as someone who didn't lose cases, especially when family members tried to exploit the elderly. "Tell me everything," she said, settling into Tom's armchair without ceremony. I walked her through it all. Riley's increasingly intrusive questions, Taylor's assessments of my property, the late-night phone calls about wills and healthcare proxies, and finally the bombshell announcement about selling the house. Sarah took notes in a leather-bound notebook, her jaw tightening with each detail. When I finished, she looked up at me with something fierce in her eyes. "Do you have any documentation, texts, emails, recordings?" I shook my head. It all happened so fast. But Sarah, here's the thing. He can't actually sell the house, can he? It's in the trust. Not without your signature as trustee, no. She pulled out her laptop. Which means either he's forged documents or he's bluffing to pressure you into signing. Let me make some calls. If he's filed anything with the county, we'll know within an hour. While Sarah worked, I made coffee in the kitchen. Tom and I had remodeled 15 years ago. The cabinets we'd chosen together. The tile backsplash I'd insisted on even though it was over budget. Every inch of this house held us. My phone buzzed. A text from Riley. "Mom, have you started packing? The movers will be there at 3 p.m. My hands shook as I showed Sarah the message. "Don't respond yet," she advised, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "Let's see if movers actually show up. If they do, I'll handle it." At 2:45 p.m., a white moving van pulled up to my curb. Two men climbed out, one older with a weathered face and gray beard, one younger with a clipboard and an eager expression. I watched from my window as they approached my front door, my heart hammering. Sarah stood beside me, phone already recording. "Let them knock," she said quietly. "Don't open the door." The knock came. 3 sharp raps. I stood frozen, my hand at my throat, where Tom's locket rested, a Mother's Day gift from Riley when he was 12. Inside was a photo of him missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera. "Mrs. Hartwell," the older man called. "We're here from Reliable Movers. Your son Riley hired us to help with your relocation." Sarah opened the door, her attorney face firmly in place, polite but unmovable like titanium wrapped in silk. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Sarah Morrison, Mrs. Hartwell's legal counsel. Can I see your work order?" The men exchanged confused glances. The older one, Frank, according to the patch on his uniform, handed over a sheet of paper. Sarah examined it carefully, then looked up with steel in her eyes. "This work order was placed by Riley Hartwell, but he has no legal authority to initiate a move from this property. The house is held in a trust with Olivia Hartwell as the sole trustee. I'm afraid you've been hired under false pretenses." Frank's face creased with concern. "But Mr. Hartwell said his mother agreed to move. He said she was going into assisted living. He seemed real worried about her." "Mrs. Hartwell has agreed to no such thing. In fact, she had no knowledge of your company being hired." Sarah handed back the paperwork. "I'd suggest you contact Mr. Hartwell for payment because you won't be moving anything from this address today." The younger man, Jimmy, barely out of his teens, looked distressed. "Ma'am, we drove 40 minutes to get here. We got other jobs scheduled. I understand and I'm sorry you've been inconvenienced, but this is a legal matter and I cannot allow you to proceed." Sarah pulled a business card from her wallet. If Mr. Hartwell disputes your invoice, please have him contact my office. The movers left Frank shaking his head and muttering about family drama, and Jimmy checking his phone anxiously, probably already telling his boss they'd been stiffed on a job. As their van pulled away, another car arrived. Riley's Audi, with Taylor in the passenger seat. I watched my son climb out of the car, his face already red with anger. He must have gotten a call from the moving company. Taylor followed her expression, sharp and calculating designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Sarah stepped onto my porch before they could reach the door. Mr. Hartwell, Mrs. Hartwell. Her voice carried across my lawn, firm and clear. I am Sarah Morrison, representing Olivia Hartwell. I need to inform you that any attempt to remove property from or claim ownership of this house without Mrs. Hartwell's written consent constitutes attempted fraud and elder abuse under Connecticut state law. Riley's face went white. Who the hell are you, Mom? What is this? I appeared in the doorway behind Sarah, feeling stronger than I had in months. Wearing the lavender cardigan Tom always said brought out my eyes. Standing tall. Sarah is my attorney, Riley, and she's here because you tried to sell my house without my permission. I was helping you. Riley's voice rose, his composure cracking like thin ice over deep water. You can't take care of this place anymore. You're putting yourself in danger. That's not your decision to make, Sarah said coldly. Mrs. Hartwell is of sound mind, perfectly capable of managing her own affairs. What you've attempted here is illegal. Taylor grabbed Riley's arm, whispering urgently, but he shook her off. I'm your son. Everything you have should be mine anyway. You're just being selfish holding on to this house when we need... He stopped abruptly, realizing what he'd almost said. When you need what, Riley? I asked quietly. Money for your Maldives vacation. Money to cover the 6-figure loan you took out at work. His eyes widened. How did you... I may be 68, but I'm not senile. I can still make phone calls. I can still do research. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You tried to steal my home to fund your vacation. You were willing to make me homeless for a beach resort. Mom, that's not we were going to take care of you. The assisted living place is nice. A 1-bedroom facility where I'd lose my independence, my memories, my entire life while you and Taylor post Instagram photos from the Maldives paid for with my house. Taylor's mask finally cracked. Maybe if you weren't so stubborn about accepting help, we wouldn't have had to... Had to what? Sarah interrupted. Commit elder fraud because that's what this is, Mrs. Hartwell. And I have everything documented now. Riley and Taylor stood on my walkway, their plans shattered, their desperation visible. For just a moment I saw fear in my son's eyes. Real fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of exposure. Fear of everything unraveling. Good. Let him be afraid. I'd been afraid for 24 hours. Now it was his turn. Riley's voice came out strangled. Mom, please. You don't understand. We're in trouble. Real trouble. If we don't what? If you don't steal from your mother, you might have to face the consequences of your choices. I felt my eyes burn with tears I refused to let fall. Do you know what your father would say if he could see you right now? Riley flinched like I'd slapped him. We're leaving, Taylor announced, her voice shrill. She grabbed Riley's arm again, harder this time. Come on, she's clearly been poisoned against us. Poisoned, I said. No, Taylor, I've just finally seen you clearly. They turned and walked away, Taylor's heels clicking angrily on the walkway, Riley's shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched their car pull away, leaving tire marks on the street. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. You did well, Olivia, but you need to prepare yourself. They're going to escalate. People this desperate don't give up easily. I knew she was right. This was just the beginning. Sarah's plan was simple but thorough. Document everything. File a formal complaint with the state's Adult Protective Services. Initiate a cease and desist order, preventing Riley from making any claims about my property or well-being. But first, we needed concrete proof of his attempted fraud. The moving company will provide testimony, Sarah explained over coffee the next morning. We sat at my kitchen table, legal pads and documents spread between us. But we need to establish his motive. The financial records would help. I had an idea where to find those records. For years, nearly 20 years, I'd been the co-signer on Riley's first credit card from when he was in college. One of those student cards with a low limit designed to help young people build credit. He'd probably forgotten it existed, but as a co-signer, I had legal access to the statements. How long until we can get them? Sarah asked. 3 days. They'll mail them. 3 days later, the manila envelope arrived. I opened it with shaking hands while Sarah watched. My dining room table became a war room. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan applications. The picture they painted was devastating. Riley and Taylor were drowning in debt. Designer clothes, Taylor's Instagram showed Gucci bags and Prada shoes. $800 here. $1,200 there. Luxury cars, both of them driving vehicles with $600 monthly payments. That expensive townhouse with its granite and glass a mortgage payment of $3,400 a month, which was already 60 days past due, according to the mortgage company statement I found. The 6-figure loan Robert had mentioned was just the latest in a series of desperate attempts to maintain their lifestyle. Credit cards maxed out at $87,000 across 6 cards. Personal loans. Cash advances. A spiral of debt that had been building for at least 3 years. And there, buried in the credit card statements, the smoking gun, a $47,000 payment to Tropical Dreams Luxury Resorts. Maldives overwater bungalow package. They'd already paid for the vacation. Money they didn't have. Money they desperately needed to recoup. My money. Jesus, Sarah breathed, photographing each page. This is worse than I thought. Olivia, they're in debt for over $250,000. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. How does this happen? Tom and I taught him to be responsible, to save, to live within his means. People change, Sarah said gently, especially when they marry someone like Taylor. As if summoned by her name, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Riley's car again. But this time there was another vehicle behind it, a black Mercedes I didn't recognize. A man in a suit stood beside Riley on my porch. Sarah answered the door, her expression neutral, but her spine straight. Mrs. Morrison, Riley said, his voice tight and controlled. This is my attorney, James Kirkland. We're here to discuss a resolution. I joined Sarah at the door, keeping my expression neutral. Riley's eyes met mine, and I saw something ugly there. Not remorse, not shame, but resentment, as if I were the one in the wrong for defending myself. Mr. Kirkland, Sarah said coolly. I wasn't aware Mr. Hartwell had retained counsel. The attorney was young, probably fresh out of law school, with a nervous energy that suggested he'd taken this case without fully understanding it. His briefcase looked expensive, but his suit was off the rack. As of yesterday, Kirkland replied, my client would like to propose a compromise that would benefit everyone involved. I'm listening, Sarah said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Mr. Hartwell recognizes there may have been some miscommunication about the property transfer. However, he maintains that his mother is unable to safely maintain the house alone. He's proposing a joint ownership arrangement where he would handle all maintenance and financial decisions, while Mrs. Hartwell retains residency. I actually laughed, a short, bitter sound that made all 3 men flinch. So I get to live here while Riley controls everything, makes all the decisions, and what happens when he decides to sell anyway. Mom, I'm trying to help. You tried to make me homeless, Riley. My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. You hired movers without my knowledge. You told them I'd agreed to leave. You've been lying for months. Kirkland cleared his throat. Mrs. Hartwell, with all due respect, my client is concerned about your judgment. This resistance to reasonable help suggests what? Sarah's voice cut like a knife. That a competent 68-year-old woman who gardens volunteers, maintains her own home, and manages her own finances is somehow incompetent because she won't let her son steal her property. Nobody's stealing anything, Riley snapped. I'm your only child, Mom. This house will be mine eventually anyway. I'm just trying to help you transition to assisted living before... Before what? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of his credit card statement, the Maldives payment clearly visible. Before you could access my home equity for your vacation. The color drained from Riley's face. Behind him, Taylor, who'd been waiting in the car, must have sensed trouble because she suddenly appeared, her expression panicked. You've been spying on us. Riley's voice shook with rage. Going through our private financial records. Records I'm legally entitled to access as a co-signer. Records that show exactly why you need money so desperately. Kirkland's professional demeanor cracked. Mr. Hartwell, you didn't mention... It's not relevant, Taylor interrupted, her voice shrill. She pushed past the men to stand in front of me. Olivia, if you loved your son, you'd want to help him. You'd want him to be happy. That house is too much for you anyway. Everyone can see that. She gestured at my lawn, my porch, as if the evidence of my incompetence was obvious. We're your family. Your only family. Taylor's voice took on a desperate edge. Are you really going to choose some lawyer over your own son? The manipulation was so transparent, so calculated, that I felt something cold settle over me. I'm choosing myself, I said quietly. Something I should have done months ago. Riley stepped forward, his face twisted with anger, his fists clenched at his sides. You stubborn old woman. You're going to regret this. We'll prove you're incompetent. We'll get guardianship. You'll what? Sarah's voice was dangerously soft. Threaten a senior citizen in front of witnesses. Add that to the attempted fraud charges. Kirkland grabbed Riley's arm. Mr. Hartwell, I strongly advise you to stop talking. But Riley shook him off. Everything we've done has been for you, to protect you, and this is how you repay us. By treating us like criminals. You are criminals, I said simply. You committed fraud, attempted elder abuse, and you're standing on my property threatening me. Let's go, Taylor hissed, pulling at Riley's arm. Come on, she's not worth it. They left, Riley radiating fury, Taylor in tears, their young attorney looking like he regretted ever answering their call. I watched them drive away, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder. You did well, Olivia, but they're going to come back. People like this always do. We need to move fast. Sarah took my advice and gave me 3 days of rest. No legal papers, no confrontations, just quiet time in my garden, long walks through the neighborhood, and evenings with old movies. I needed to recover my strength for whatever came next. The first attempt at manipulation came through email. A long, rambling message from Taylor arrived on the 4th day of my rest period. I read it over my morning coffee, Sarah sitting across from me at my kitchen table. Dear Olivia, it began, and I could almost hear the fake sweetness dripping from every word. I've been crying for days, unable to sleep, thinking about how our family has been torn apart. I know Riley made mistakes in how he approached the situation, but his heart was in the right place. He loves you so much and worries constantly about your safety. I worry too. You're all alone in that big house. And what if something happened? What if you fell and no one found you for days? Last month, my aunt broke her hip and laid on her bathroom floor for 16 hours before anyone found her. We just don't want that to happen to you. We just want to take care of you, Olivia. Please, can't we meet somewhere neutral and talk this through? I miss our Sunday dinners. I miss being a family. Love, Taylor. I set down my phone and looked at Sarah. She's good. I almost feel guilty. That's the point, Sarah said dryly, sipping her coffee. Classic manipulation. Guilt, fear, isolation. Notice how she takes no responsibility but paints herself as the victim. And that story about her aunt, I'd bet money it never happened. I forwarded the email to Sarah's professional account for documentation and sent a brief reply. Taylor, I'm open to reconciliation, but only after legal matters are resolved and genuine apologies are made. Olivia. The response came within minutes. Legal matters, Olivia. We're family. You're treating us like criminals when we only wanted to help. This is what that lawyer has done to you. She's turned you against your own son. Riley is heartbroken. He can barely function at work. Please just have coffee with us. No lawyers, no drama. Just family. I didn't respond. Sarah had warned me this would happen. The love bombing. The attempts to isolate me from my support system. The pressure to meet without legal protection. 2 days later, flowers arrived. An enormous bouquet of roses, yellow ones my favorite. The same color Tom had planted in our garden. The delivery man could barely carry the crystal vase. The card read, Mom, I'm sorry for everything. Can we please talk your loving son, Riley? I put them in water. They were beautiful after all, and it seemed wasteful to let them die. But I didn't call. Then came the phone calls. Riley left voicemails, his voice varying from tearful to angry to wounded. I listened to each one, my heart breaking a little more with every message. Mom, you're breaking my heart. I made a mistake. Okay, I admit it, but you're my mother. Doesn't that count for something? Call me back. Please. It's been 3 days. 3 days and you won't even talk to your own son. Do you know how that feels? Fine, be that way. But don't come crying to me when you need help and there's no one there. Tiffany called too, her messages more aggressive. You're being manipulated by that lawyer, Olivia. She just wants your money. We're your real family. We're the ones who will be there when you really need help. Think about that. I remained silent following Sarah's advice. Every message, every email, every attempt at contact was documented and forwarded to Sarah's files. But the isolation was harder than I'd expected. Riley was right about one thing: he was my only child. The Sunday dinners had stopped. The phone calls I'd grown accustomed to, even when they were annoying, had ceased except for these manipulative attempts. The house felt emptier. My bedroom at night was the worst. I'd lie there in the dark, Tom's side of the bed, still empty after 5 years, and wonder if I was doing the right thing. Maybe Riley really was just worried about me. Maybe I was being too harsh. But then I'd remember his face when he told me he'd sold my house. The coldness in his eyes. The rehearsed speech. And I'd know this wasn't about love. This was about money. That's when my book club saved me. I'd been a member of the Maple Street Literary Society for 12 years, meeting every Thursday evening to discuss everything from classic literature to contemporary mysteries. Helen Pritchard hosted most weeks in her sunroom with its comfortable chairs and endless supply of wine and cheese. I'd been quiet about my family troubles, but the week after the flower delivery, something broke in me. "Olivia, you seem distracted," Helen observed as we discussed our current selection, a mystery about family secrets and inheritance. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Is everything all right?" And I told them. Everything. The attempted fraud, the lawyers, the manipulation, the loneliness. I half expected judgment. Advice to forgive and forget. Platitudes about family being everything. But what I received instead was something far more valuable. "Oh, honey, my nephew tried something similar with his mother-in-law." Clara Jennings said, her eyes fierce behind her reading glasses. She was 72 and had the energy of someone half her age. "Tried to get power of attorney while she was recovering from surgery. You're doing exactly the right thing. Don't let them guilt you." "My daughter went through this with her ex-husband," Patricia Moore added. She was the youngest of our group at 59, a retired social worker who'd seen everything. The manipulation tactics, gifts, tears, anger, they're straight out of the abuser's playbook. They cycle through them until they find one that works. Helen squeezed my hand. Her husband had died 2 years ago, and we'd bonded over widowhood. "You're not alone, Olivia. We're here. Whatever you need." Over the next week, my book club became my fortress. Helen came by twice with homemade soup and stayed for tea. We'd sit in my kitchen and she'd tell me stories about her own son who'd wanted her to sell her house and move closer to him in Florida. I told him, "Michael, I'll visit, but Connecticut is my home." He got over it. Clara, whose husband had been a police officer for 30 years before he passed, gave me practical advice about home security and documentation. "Keep everything, Olivia. Every text, every email, every voicemail. When people show you who they are, believe them and have the receipts to prove it." Patricia connected me with a support group for seniors dealing with financial exploitation by family members. "You'd be surprised how common this is," she said, "and how much it helps to talk to others who've been through it." I attended my first support group meeting at the community center on a rainy Tuesday evening. The fluorescent lights were harsh, the coffee was terrible, and the circle of folding chairs looked like something from a church basement. But sitting in that circle of 12 people all dealing with similar betrayals by children, spouses, or relatives, I realized something profound. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. What Riley and Taylor had attempted was a recognized pattern of elder abuse, and I had every right to defend myself. "My son told me I was being selfish," an elderly man named Robert shared. He was 75 with kind eyes and weathered hands that shook slightly when he spoke. "Said I was ruining his life by not giving him control of my finances. I actually believed him for a while. Signed over my checking account. Within 3 months, he'd drained $40,000. Mine told me she'd put me in a nursing home if I didn't sign over my house," a woman named Dorothy added. She reminded me of my mother, small, gray-haired, but with steel in her spine. "Said no one would visit me there. I was so scared I almost did it." Their stories echoed mine. Some were worse: actual theft, forged signatures, physical threats. Some were just beginning like mine. But they all validated my experience, strengthened my resolve. When it was my turn to share, I told them about Riley, about the house, about the trust that had saved me. "You did everything right," Robert said when I finished. "Evidence lawyer standing firm. You're showing us all how to fight back." The group facilitator, a woman named Linda, who worked for Adult Protective Services, approached me after the meeting. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'd like to talk to you about your case. What your son attempted, the fraudulent sale, the coercion, the threats, that's exactly the kind of situation our office investigates. She handed me her card. Your attorney can contact me directly. We take these matters very seriously. I walked out of that community center feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The rain had stopped and the evening air smelled clean and fresh. I wasn't alone. I had my book club, my support group, my attorney, my community. Riley and Taylor had tried to convince me that they were all I had. But they were wrong. And that knowledge made me stronger than I'd been in months. They came on a Sunday morning 3 weeks after their last attempt at contact. I was in my garden pruning the hydrangeas that lined my back fence. The morning sun was warm on my shoulders, and I was thinking about what Tom would say about all this when I heard the car doors slam. Not one, two. I stood slowly, trowel still in hand, and watched as Riley and Taylor walked toward me, followed by an older woman I'd never seen before. They all wore carefully constructed expressions of concern, like actors playing roles in a drama I hadn't auditioned for. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly and pressed record. "Mom," Riley said, his voice gentle and controlled. "We need to talk. Please just hear us out." I didn't invite them in. I stood in my garden, dirt on my knees, trowel in my hand like a weapon, and waited. The older woman stepped forward, extending her hand. She was in her early 60s, professionally dressed in a navy pantsuit, carrying a leather portfolio and a medical bag. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm Dr. Patricia Henshaw. I'm a geriatric care specialist. Riley asked me to do a wellness check." A doctor. They'd brought a doctor to declare me incompetent. "I didn't agree to any assessment," I said calmly, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Of course not," Dr. Henshaw said smoothly, her smile practiced and warm. "But often seniors don't realize when they need help. The signs can be subtle. Forgetting to pay bills, neglecting home maintenance, isolation from family. May I observe you for just a few minutes? Non-invasive, I promise." "I pay all my bills on time," I said. "My home is well maintained, and I'm not isolated. I have book club tonight, actually." I looked directly at Riley. I'm surrounded by people who actually care about my well-being. Taylor's carefully constructed mask cracked slightly. Her jaw tightened. "Olivia, we're trying to help you. We brought Dr. Henshaw at our own expense because we're worried. Worried about your Maldives vacation being canceled." The words came out sharper than I intended. Riley's jaw tightened. "Mom, we've canceled the trip." "Okay, we canceled it because our family is more important than any vacation." I almost believed him. For just a moment I saw the son I'd raised. The boy who'd cried when his goldfish died. The teenager who'd brought me coffee in bed on Mother's Day. But then I caught Taylor's expression, a flash of resentment quickly hidden, and I knew it was a lie. "Show me the cancellation confirmation," I said. If you canceled the trip, show me the email, the refund proof. Pull out your phone right now and show me." Riley's face reddened. "I can't believe after everything you still don't trust us." "You tried to sell my house without my permission, Riley. You hired movers to evict me. You've lied repeatedly. Why should I trust you?" Dr. Henshaw cleared her throat, reclaiming control of the conversation. "Mrs. Hartwell, this kind of paranoia and suspicion is actually quite common in seniors experiencing cognitive decline. The inability to trust family members, the belief that loved ones are out to get you, these are red flags we look for." The manipulation was so smooth, so professional, I felt a chill run down my spine. This woman was a real doctor giving me a real diagnosis based on manufactured symptoms. If I weren't careful, this could be used against me in court. "I appreciate your concern, Dr. Henshaw," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "But I'm not experiencing cognitive decline. I'm experiencing attempted financial exploitation by my son. Would you like to see the documented evidence, the moving company work order, the credit card statements showing the paid vacation?" The doctor's professional smile faltered. "You've turned our mother against us," Taylor said, her voice rising with each word. "With your lawyers and your accusations and your paranoia, we're trying to build a relationship here, trying to be a family, and you're treating us like criminals." "You committed a crime," I said quietly. "That's not an accusation. That's a fact." "We made a mistake," Riley shouted, his control finally breaking completely. His face was red, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "A mistake. People make mistakes, Mom. But instead of forgiving us, instead of being a real mother, you're acting like we're monsters." He took a step toward me, and I stepped back instinctively. We needed help. We were desperate. His voice cracked. And you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity while your only son is drowning. Do you know what that feels like? Do you? There it was. The real Riley finally visible beneath the concerned son performance. So it's my fault you're in debt, I asked. My fault you chose to live beyond your means. My fault you paid for a vacation you couldn't afford. You're supposed to help your children, Taylor shrieked. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. That's what parents do. They sacrifice, they give. But you're just a selfish old woman clinging to a house you don't even need. The venom in her voice was startling. This was what she really thought of me. Not a person, not Riley's mother, just an obstacle to their lifestyle. Get off my property, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. All of you, now. Dr. Henshaw looked between us, clearly regretting her involvement. Perhaps we should— We're leaving, Riley said, his voice cold and hard as ice. But Mom, you need to understand something. We tried to do this the nice way. We tried to help you, to take care of you, to be patient with your stubbornness. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne, expensive, probably designer. But you've made your choice. You've chosen lawyers and strangers over your own family, and you'll regret it. When you're all alone, Taylor added, her eyes glittering with tears of rage. When you need help and there's no one there, when you fall in your precious house and lie there for days, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that we tried. They turned and walked away. Dr. Henshaw hurried after them, clearly uncomfortable. I watched them drive off, my hands shaking. Not with fear, but with anger. I walked back into my house and called Sarah immediately. They brought a doctor to declare me incompetent. I told her, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. But I stood my ground. I didn't let them in. I didn't engage beyond what was necessary. And Sarah, I recorded everything. Good, Sarah said, and I could hear the approval in her voice. Olivia, they're getting desperate, which means we're winning. But it also means they might do something drastic. I want you to consider installing security cameras. Already done, I said, surprising myself with how prepared I felt. Helen's son-in-law installed them last week. Front door, back door, and driveway. I have footage of the entire encounter. Sarah laughed, a sound of pure approval. You're going to be just fine, Olivia. Better than fine. After I hung up, I sat in Tom's armchair and let myself feel everything. The fear, the anger, the sadness of knowing my son had become someone I barely recognized. But underneath it all, stronger than everything else, was determination. They'd tried to break me. Instead, they'd made me stronger. The summons came 6 weeks later. A certified letter delivered on a Tuesday morning while I was having coffee with Helen. The return address was Kirkland & Associates law firm. My hands shook as I opened it. Petition for emergency guardianship of Olivia Hartwell, the heading read. Riley was filing to have me declared mentally incompetent and unable to care for myself. The hearing was scheduled for October 17th at the county courthouse. Helen took the papers from my trembling hands and read them, her expression darkening with each line. She caught herself. I'm sorry, Olivia. I know he's your son, but this is evil, I finished for her. The word you're looking for is evil. Sarah arrived within the hour, summoned by my frantic phone call. She read the petition carefully, making notes in the margins. They have nothing, she assured me, but her expression was grim. Just allegations and Dr. Henshaw's cursory observation, which any judge will see through. But Olivia, you need to prepare yourself. Riley will say terrible things. Taylor will cry. They'll paint you as a tragic figure who can't see her own decline. I know, I said. And I did. I'd spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment. Sarah assembled our defense with military precision. We had bank records proving I managed my finances perfectly, every bill paid on time for the past 5 years, savings account growing consistently, investment portfolio managed wisely. We had medical records from my doctor, Dr. Raymond Kowalski, showing excellent cognitive function. He'd performed a full evaluation at my request, and the results were clear. Olivia Hartwell, cognitive age equivalent to a 50-year-old. Memory, reasoning, executive function, all excellent. No signs of dementia, confusion, or incompetence. We had testimonials from my book club members, the library volunteer coordinator, Pastor Davis from my church, who'd witnessed the parking lot confrontation, and Linda from Adult Protective Services, who'd been monitoring the case. We had security footage of Riley's confrontations, the moving company's documentation, The forged signature request, the credit card statements showing the Maldives payment. We had everything. They have nothing, Sarah repeated the night before the hearing. Just allegations and Dr. Henshaw's biased observation. But Olivia, be prepared. When Riley cries on that stand when he talks about his love for you, your heart is going to break. My heart broke 6 weeks ago, I said quietly, when he chose greed over his mother. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The walls were institutional beige. Wooden benches lined the gallery, and a single American flag stood beside the judge's bench. Riley and Taylor sat with their attorney Kirkland, who'd clearly taken time to better prepare this case. His suit was nicer, this time his briefcase organized. They'd also brought Dr. Henshaw and 2 other people I didn't recognize, character witnesses, probably. My side of the courtroom felt different. Sarah sat beside me, crisp and professional in a charcoal suit. Daniel Brooks, her associate, flanked my other side. Behind us, filling the gallery, Helen, Clara, and Patricia from Book Club, Dr. Kowalski, Linda from Adult Protective Services, the library volunteer coordinator. My neighbors, Carol and Jim Martinez, who'd realized Riley had manipulated them and felt terrible. Even Detective James Walsh, who'd opened a criminal investigation into Riley's forged documents, sat in the back row. Judge Patricia Carmichael entered, a black woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the petition silently, then looked up. Mr. Kirkland, this is a petition for emergency guardianship of Olivia Hartwell, age 68, filed by her son Riley Hartwell. Please present your case. Kirkland stood, his performance more polished now. Your Honor, Riley Hartwell seeks guardianship of his mother out of deep concern for her well-being. Mrs. Hartwell is living alone in a large house she can no longer maintain. She's become increasingly paranoid, accusing family members of fraud, refusing reasonable help, isolating herself from loved ones. Dr. Henshaw will testify to observed signs of cognitive decline. Dr. Henshaw was called first. She described our garden encounter, carefully framing my reasonable questions as suspicion and paranoia, my documented evidence as obsessive record-keeping, my defense of my property as inability to accept necessary help. Mrs. Hartwell seemed confused about why we were there, Dr. Henshaw testified. She couldn't clearly articulate her living situation. Classic signs of early-stage dementia. Then came the character witnesses. Mark Davidson, Riley's colleague, testified that Riley was devoted to his mother and worried sick about her. He talks about her constantly, always concerned about her safety. Taylor's sister Jennifer claimed I'd changed in recent months, becoming hostile and irrational. The Olivia I knew was sweet and accommodating. This woman is angry and suspicious of everyone. Finally, Riley himself took the stand. Kirkland prompted him gently. Riley, tell the court why you're seeking guardianship. Riley's performance was masterful. He spoke softly, emotionally, painting a picture of a devoted son watching his beloved mother deteriorate. I love my mother more than anything in this world, he said, his voice breaking slightly. She raised me alone after Dad died, worked 2 jobs to put me through college. She's my hero. He wiped his eyes. Real tears or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. But she's not herself anymore. She's paranoid, thinking everyone is against her. She barely leaves home anymore. The isolation, the refusal of help. I'm terrified I'm going to get a call one day that she's fallen or worse. And the incident with the moving company? Kirkland asked. Riley hung his head, the picture of remorse. I made a mistake. I admit it. I was so worried about her safety that I thought if I could just show her how much easier life could be in a smaller place. His voice cracked convincingly. I shouldn't have acted without her explicit consent. I see that now. But, Your Honor, it came from love. Pure love and concern for my mother's welfare. No mention of the Maldives. No mention of his debt. No mention of his real motives. It was Sarah's turn to cross-examine. She stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mr. Hartwell, you testified that you acted out of concern for your mother's safety. Is that correct? Yes. And yet you hired movers without informing her. Isn't that right? As I said, it was a mistake, Kay. A mistake that coincided with a $47,000 payment to a luxury resort in the Maldives. The courtroom went silent. Riley's face paled. We had a trip planned. Had Sarah pulled out documents? Your attorney stated you canceled it, but you actually just postponed the dates, haven't you? She approached the bench and handed copies to the judge and Kirkland. These are screenshots from Mrs. Taylor Hartwell's social media made just 2 weeks ago. Countdown posts for their rescheduled dream vacation, resort confirmation emails, credit card statements showing continued payment plans. Riley looked at Taylor, who'd gone white. Your Honor, Sarah continued, this isn't about concern for Mrs. Hartwell's well-being. This is about financial desperation. Mr. Hartwell is in significant debt over $250,000 across credit cards, personal loans, and a mortgage he can no longer afford. She presented more evidence, bank statements, loan documents, the forged signature request. He attempted to access his mother's home equity to fund his lifestyle. When she refused, he tried fraud. When that failed, he filed this petition, a last desperate attempt to control her assets. Judge Carmichael's expression had hardened with each revelation. Sarah called me to the stand next. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt steadier than I'd expected. My hand rested on the Bible as I took the oath, and I looked directly at Judge Carmichael as I spoke. I do. Sarah gave me an encouraging nod before beginning. Mrs. Hartwell, please tell the court about your daily life. I took a breath and began. I wake every morning at 6 a.m. I make breakfast, usually oatmeal with blueberries, sometimes eggs if I'm feeling ambitious. I read the newspaper front to back and solve the crossword puzzle. It usually takes me about 20 minutes. I saw Riley shift uncomfortably in his seat. I volunteer at the Maple Street Library twice a week teaching seniors computer literacy. We cover everything from basic email to protecting themselves from online scams. Many of my students are older than me, and several have told me I've helped them reconnect with grandchildren through social media. What else fills your days? Sarah prompted. I attend book club every Thursday evening. We've read 47 books this year. I can name every one if you'd like. I smiled slightly. We're currently reading The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I'm on page 234. Judge Carmichael was taking notes. I maintain my home. I garden my hydrangeas, won second place at the county fair last month. I clean, I repair what needs repairing. Last week I fixed a leaking faucet in my guest bathroom using a YouTube tutorial. Took me 40 minutes, but I got it done. And your finances? Sarah asked. I manage my own finances. Every bill paid on time for 37 years in that house. My savings account has grown steadily since my husband passed. Tom taught me to be careful with money. I have investments managed through a local financial advisor, Rebecca Chan at Merrill Lynch. She's been my advisor for 12 years and will testify that I understand every decision we make together. I looked at Riley, then really looked at him. I am not confused. I am not incompetent. I am hurt. Sarah let that hang in the air for a moment. Mrs. Hartwell, do you understand why Riley filed this petition? Yes, I said quietly. He wants my house to pay his debts. Do you love your son? The question hit me harder than I expected. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. I love the boy he was, I said, my voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. I grieve the man he's become. I saw Riley flinch, saw Taylor grab his hand. If the court grants you autonomy, what will you do? Sarah asked. I'll live my life. I'll protect my assets for my future care. And I'll pray Riley finds his way back to the person he used to be. I paused. But I won't sacrifice my security for his mistakes. My husband and I worked too hard for what we have. This house, these savings, they're not just money. They're our life's work, our legacy. And I won't let them be squandered on luxury vacations and designer handbags. Thank you, Mrs. Hartwell. No further questions. Kirkland stood for cross-examination. He was young, but he'd learned quickly. His approach was gentler now, more calculated. Mrs. Hartwell, isn't it true you've become increasingly isolated over the past year? No. I have a book club volunteer work support group's friends. But your relationship with your son has deteriorated significantly. Because he tried to steal my home. That's not isolation, Mr. Kirkland. That's self-protection. Isn't it true you refused reasonable help from your son when he offered it? I refused to let him sell my house without my permission. There's nothing reasonable about fraud. Kirkland pulled out a paper. Mrs. Hartwell, your son is in danger. He came to you for help, and you turned him away. Don't you think that's cruel? I felt anger flash through me, hot and bright. He didn't come to me for help, Mr. Kirkland. He came to take what wasn't his. There's a difference. But when he was honest about his financial troubles, he was never honest, I interrupted. He lied about selling my house. He lied about canceling his vacation. He lied to movers, to title companies, to a doctor. When exactly was he honest? Kirkland switched tactics. Mrs. Hartwell, your son testified that he loves you deeply, that he's worried about you being alone. Can you honestly say those concerns are completely unfounded? I met his eyes. I can honestly say that if my son was genuinely concerned about my welfare, he wouldn't have tried to make me homeless. He wouldn't have forged my signature. He wouldn't have brought a doctor to my home to declare me incompetent. Love doesn't look like what Riley has done to me, Mr. Kirkland. Your Honor, Kirkland said, turning to Judge Carmichael, my client may have made errors in judgment, but his concern is genuine. Mrs. Hartwell is 68 years old, living alone. I'm 68, not 98, I said, and being alone doesn't make me incompetent. It makes me a widow. There's a difference. Kirkland tried one more approach. Mrs. Hartwell, if Riley gets into serious trouble with his creditors, if something happens to him, won't you feel guilty for not helping when you could have? That question landed like a punch to my gut, because part of me, the mother part that never quite goes away no matter what your children do, did feel guilty. Did wonder if I should have just given them the money. But then I thought of Tom, of the nights he worked overtime, of the vacations we didn't take so we could save, of the sacrifices we made so Riley could have everything he needed. Mr. Kirkland, I said slowly, I raised my son to be responsible, to work hard, to live within his means. If I bail him out now, what am I teaching him? That actions don't have consequences, that he can steal from his mother and face no repercussions. I looked at Riley. I love you, son, but I won't enable you. If you're in trouble, that's because of choices you made, not because I refused to sacrifice everything your father and I built. Kirkland had no response to that. No further questions. Judge Carmichael called a recess. 20 minutes that felt like hours. When she returned, her expression was grave. I've presided over many guardianship cases in my 15 years on the bench, she began. Most involved genuine concern for an incapacitated loved one. Adult children seeking to protect parents who truly cannot care for themselves. Those cases, while difficult, serve an important purpose. She looked directly at Riley. This is not one of those cases. Riley's face went white. Mrs. Olivia Hartwell is clearly competent, financially stable, and living independently without issue. She's sharp, articulate, and by all accounts more capable than many people half her age. Judge Carmichael's voice hardened. The evidence shows that Mr. Riley Hartwell filed this petition not out of concern, but to gain control of his mother's assets. His own testimony, combined with the financial records presented by Mrs. Morrison, paints a clear picture of a man drowning in debt who saw his mother's home equity as a life raft. She shuffled papers. Furthermore, the evidence of attempted fraud is deeply concerning. The forged signature request, the unauthorized contact with title companies, the hiring of movers without Mrs. Hartwell's knowledge or consent. These are not the actions of a concerned son. These are the actions of someone engaged in financial exploitation. Riley was crying, now silent tears streaming down his face. Taylor sat stone-faced beside him. I am denying the petition for guardianship, Judge Carmichael announced. Mrs. Hartwell retains full control of her property finances and person. Furthermore, I am ordering Mr. Hartwell to pay Mrs. Hartwell's legal fees, which I understand amount to approximately $35,000. Riley made a choking sound. Additionally, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution for forgery, attempted fraud, and elder abuse under Connecticut General Statutes Section 53A 192A. She looked at Taylor. I am also referring Mrs. Taylor Hartwell to the DA for potential perjury charges based on her testimony today, which was contradicted by her own social media posts. Finally, I am issuing a restraining order. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell may not contact Olivia Hartwell Approach within 500 feet of her property or make any claims regarding her property or mental state. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. She brought her gavel down. Court is adjourned. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Riley collapsed head in hands. Kirkland was already gathering his papers, his expression suggesting he wanted to be anywhere else. Taylor sat frozen, mascara-streaked and furious. I stood on shaking legs. Helen, Clara, and Patricia rushed forward, wrapping me in hugs. Dr. Kowalski shook Sarah's hand. Linda from Adult Protective Services approached with her card and a promise to follow up. Detective Walsh caught me at the courtroom door. Mrs. Hartwell, I'll be in touch about the criminal investigation. What your son attempted, it's serious. The DA will likely want to talk to you. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. Thank you, Detective. As we walked out of the courthouse, I saw Riley and Taylor in the parking lot. Riley was leaning against their car shoulders, shaking. Taylor was on her phone, probably calling someone, her parents maybe, or a friend. Someone who might offer sympathy they weren't getting from each other. For just a moment, I wanted to go to him, to hug him like I did when he was small and the world was scary, to tell him everything would be okay. But I kept walking, because some things aren't okay, and pretending they are doesn't help anyone. 3 weeks after the trial, Detective Walsh called. Riley had been arrested. The charges were extensive: attempted fraud, forgery, attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, and making false statements to financial institutions. Each carried potential prison time. He posted bail, Walsh told me over the phone. $50,000. I'm guessing Taylor's parents helped with that. I sat in Tom's chair, the phone pressed to my ear, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, just emptiness. What happens now? I asked. DA's offering a plea deal. If Riley pleads guilty, he's looking at probation, community service, mandatory financial counseling, and restitution, meaning he'd have to pay back your legal fees plus damages. If he goes to trial and loses, he could serve 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years. My son, in prison. Mrs. Hartwell, I need to ask, are you willing to provide a victim impact statement if this goes to trial? Could I stand in front of a judge and jury and describe what Riley had done? Could I be the one to send him to prison? I need to think about it, I said. Of course, take your time. But Mrs. Hartwell, you should know men like your son, if they don't face consequences, they don't stop. They just find new victims. After I hung up, I sat in the darkening living room watching shadows lengthen across the floor. This was the floor where Riley took his first steps, Tom and I cheering him on. These were the walls that had sheltered him from nightmares and homework stress and teenage heartbreak. When had it all gone wrong? The doorbell startled me from my thoughts. Through the window, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, about 40, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She looked nervous, clutching an envelope. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Mrs. Hartwell, I'm Jennifer Morrison. Riley's... Well, I guess I'm his ex-girlfriend now. I blinked. I'm sorry. From before Taylor. We dated for 3 years in his 20s. I heard about what happened, the trial, and I needed to tell you something. I invited her in, too curious to be cautious. We sat in the living room and she twisted the envelope in her hands. Riley borrowed money from me, Jennifer said. 8 years ago, right before we broke up. $20,000. Said it was for an investment opportunity, that he'd pay me back in 6 months. She laughed bitterly. I never saw a penny. When I asked about it, he got angry. Said I was being materialistic, that I didn't trust him. The fights got worse until eventually we broke up. I always thought it was my fault, that I was too demanding. Why are you telling me this? I asked gently. Because I want you to know what he did to you. It's a pattern. It's not new. It's who he is. She handed me the envelope. This is the promissory note he signed. I've never tried to collect because honestly I just wanted to forget about him. But I thought maybe it would help your case. Show that this isn't a one-time mistake. Inside the envelope was indeed a promissory note signed by Riley dated 8 years ago. $20,000 borrowed from Jennifer Morrison to be repaid with interest. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. This must have been hard to share. Jennifer smiled sadly. Mrs. Hartwell, from what I remember, you were always kind to me. You didn't deserve what he did. I hope you can find peace. After she left, I called Sarah and told her about Jennifer's visit. This is significant, Sarah said. It establishes a pattern of financial misconduct. The DA will want to see this. Olivia, I think you need to prepare for Riley to face serious consequences. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Detective Walsh had said. If Riley didn't face consequences, he wouldn't stop, but he was still my son. I got out of bed around 2 a.m. and went to Riley's old room. I'd kept it mostly the same after he moved out his twin bed with the blue comforter, his bookshelves still filled with childhood favorites, his high school baseball trophies on the dresser. Photos covered one wall. Riley at 8, missing his 2 front teeth holding a soccer trophy. Riley at 13, gangly and awkward at his bar mitzvah. Riley at 18 in his graduation cap and gown, me and Tom flanking him. Where was that boy? When did he become the man who tried to steal from his mother? I pulled out an old shoebox from his closet. Inside were cards he'd made me over the years. Happy Mother's Day to the best mom ever in crayon. Thanks for taking care of me when I was sick, in his teenage scrawl. I couldn't have done college without you, in his young adult hand. Each one a reminder of who he'd been, who I thought he was. My phone rang, startling me. 3 a.m. Nothing good ever came from 3 a.m. calls. It was a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mom, Riley's voice broken and raw. Mom, please don't hang up. I should have. The restraining order was clear. But I was sitting in his childhood room surrounded by memories of better days, and I was weak. You're violating the restraining order, I said. I know. I don't care. Mom, I'm calling from a payphone because I knew you wouldn't answer if you saw my number. He was crying. I need you to know I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Riley, let me finish, please. He took a shuddering breath. I've been in therapy. Court mandated at first, but I'm still going because I need it. And my therapist made me write down every lie I told you, every manipulation, every time I chose money over you. He laughed, but it was a broken sound. It was 17 pages, Mom. 17 pages of ways I betrayed you. And seeing it all written down, God, what did I become? I clutched the phone, tears streaming down my face. I don't know, Riley, I really don't. Taylor left me, he said. Filed for divorce 3 days after the trial. Said I was a loser who couldn't even steal properly. That's how she phrased it. Like the problem was that I got caught, not that I tried. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want him to hurt. Don't be. She was right. I am a loser. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. I'm probably going to prison. I destroyed my relationship with my only parent, and for what? A vacation I never got to take, a lifestyle I couldn't afford, Mom. I traded you for nothing. Riley, it's 3 a.m. I know, I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about what I did to you, about Dad, about what he'd say if he could see me now. His voice cracked. He'd be so ashamed. Yes, I said quietly. He would. The truth of it hung between us. I'm not calling to ask you to drop the charges, Riley said. I deserve whatever happens. I'm calling because I need you to know that the son you raised is still in here somewhere. He's buried under a lot of bad decisions and greed and stupidity, but he's still here. And he's sorry. So sorry. Riley, I can't do this right now. I know. I'm sorry. I'll let you go. But Mom, thank you for not hanging up. That's more than I deserved. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in his childhood room until dawn, surrounded by ghosts of who we used to be. The Adult Protective Services investigation moved swiftly. Linda Martinez, the caseworker assigned to my case, was thorough and compassionate. Within 2 weeks, she contacted me with her findings. Mrs. Hartwell, what your son attempted constitutes financial exploitation and attempted fraud under state law, she said. We were sitting in my living room, her files spread across my coffee table. We're opening a formal case. You should also know that his employer has been notified. It's standard procedure in cases involving fiduciary misconduct by financial professionals. I hadn't expected that. His employer, when someone in a position of financial trust demonstrates this kind of behavior toward vulnerable family members, their employer needs to know. It speaks to character and judgment. She paused. Mrs. Hartwell, I understand he's your son. This can't be easy. It's not, I admitted, but it's necessary. Over the next month, I watched the dominoes fall. Riley's firm, Hartwell & Morrison Financial Consultants, named after him and his business partner, placed him on administrative leave pending their investigation. When the partners discovered he'd taken a loan under false pretenses and attempted to defraud his own mother, they made the decision quickly. Termination for cause effective immediately. No severance, no references. Taylor's real estate license came under scrutiny next. The state board investigated whether she'd been involved in the fraudulent property transaction. While they didn't find enough evidence to revoke her license, her brokerage quietly let her go. In real estate, reputation is everything. and whispers about attempted elder fraud spread quickly through the professional community. The Maldives trip was finally definitively canceled. The resort refused a refund, keeping their $47,000 as per the cancellation policy. All those Instagram posts, all that bragging for nothing. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. I received a call from Chase Mortgage Company. Riley and Taylor's payment was 90 days overdue. Apparently, Riley had been using credit cards to make mortgage payments a house of cards that had finally collapsed. The bank was initiating foreclosure proceedings on their townhouse. "We're required to notify co-signers," the representative explained. "And according to our records, you co-signed on this mortgage in 2018. My blood ran cold. "I did what you co-signed. We have your signature on the loan documents." "I never co-signed anything. Can you fax me those documents?" Within an hour, I was staring at a mortgage application with my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close, but the loops were wrong, the pressure inconsistent. Another forgery. I called Detective Walsh immediately. "That son of a—" He caught himself. "Sorry, Mrs. Hartwell. This is additional fraud. I'll add it to the charges. Do you know how much equity they have in that property?" "I have no idea." "I'll find out. But Mrs. Hartwell, if you're a co-signer, you could be liable for the debt if they default." Which meant Riley's financial disaster could become mine too. Sarah filed an emergency motion the next day, seeking to have my name removed from the mortgage based on fraud. The bank agreed to suspend collection activity pending the criminal investigation, but the damage was done. Riley hadn't just tried to steal my house. He'd forged my name on his mortgage, potentially saddling me with hundreds of thousands in debt. When I called Detective Walsh to give a formal statement about the forged mortgage documents, he had news. "Mrs. Hartwell, we've uncovered more forgeries. Riley attempted to open credit cards in your name, 3 of them. He was denied because the addresses didn't match, but the applications are there. He also tried to take out a personal loan using your house as collateral." "How many crimes is that now?" I asked, feeling numb. "Let's just say the DA's very interested in this case. This isn't a desperate son making one bad choice. This is systematic financial exploitation." 3 months after the trial, I received a letter. Not from Riley, he was forbidden from contacting me, but from his court-appointed therapist, Dr. Marcus Webb. The letter was professional, carefully worded. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm writing with Riley's permission and knowledge. I've been working with your son for 12 weeks now, and I believe he's making genuine progress in understanding his behavior. He's asked me to inquire whether you'd be willing to participate in family therapy. There would be no pressure to reconcile, simply an opportunity for mediated communication. Please consider this carefully. There's no obligation to respond." I showed the letter to Sarah. "It's your choice," she said. "But Olivia, the criminal trial is in 6 weeks. Anything you say in therapy could potentially be used in court. I'd advise waiting until after the trial." I took her advice and sent a polite decline. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm not ready for therapy at this time. Perhaps after legal matters are resolved." The criminal trial was set for December 15th. Riley's attorney had advised him to take the plea deal, probation, community service, financial counseling, and restitution, but Riley refused. "He wants his day in court," Detective Walsh told me. "Wants to explain himself to a jury. His lawyer thinks he's making a mistake, but it's his right." Which meant I would have to testify. Would have to stand in front of strangers and describe what my son had done to me. Would have to be cross-examined. Would have to potentially send him to prison. The weight of it pressed down on me like a physical thing. I attended my support group religiously during those months. The 12 faces around the circle became my lifeline. "I have to testify against my son," I told them one evening, my voice breaking. "How do I do that?" Dorothy, whose own son had stolen her savings, squeezed my hand. "You tell the truth, honey. That's all you can do. The truth isn't cruel. It's just true." Robert, who'd reconciled with his grandson after the boy went through a rehabilitation program, offered different advice. "Remember why you're doing this. Not to punish him, but to protect yourself and others. If he doesn't face consequences now, he'll do it again. Maybe not to you, but to someone." The wisdom in that room, the hard-won experience of people who'd survived betrayal by the people they loved most, it held me together when I wanted to fall apart. My book club was my other anchor. Helen, Clara, and Patricia had attended every court hearing, sat behind me in silent support. Now they organized a rotation to check on me daily. "You're not going through this alone," Helen insisted. "We've got you." And they did. Every evening one of them would call or stop by. We'd have tea talk about books or gardening or anything except Riley. They gave me normalcy when my life felt like a nightmare. David Sterling, the retired professor I'd been casually dating, became more present during this time too. We'd met at a library fundraiser 6 months before all this started, a kind man with gentle eyes and a love of literature that matched my own. "I understand if this is too much," I told him one evening. We were having dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. "I come with a lot of baggage right now." "Olivia," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Everyone our age comes with baggage. At least yours is honest baggage. You're not hiding who you are or what you're dealing with." "But a son on trial for trying to steal from me. That's not exactly normal dating material." He smiled. "I was married for 35 years to a woman who developed dementia in her 50s. I spent a decade watching her forget who I was. I understand complicated family situations, and I understand that who your son is doesn't define who you are." That kindness from someone with no obligation to offer it broke something open in me. I cried right there in the restaurant, and David handed me his handkerchief without judgment. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Scared of the trial. Scared of what happens to Riley. Scared of what it means that I can't just forgive him and make this all go away." "Being scared is reasonable," David said. "But Olivia, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You're going to get through this." I wanted to believe him. 2 weeks before the trial, I received another unexpected visitor. I was in my garden, always my garden, my sanctuary, when I heard the gate creak. I looked up to see a young woman, maybe 25, with Riley's eyes and dark hair. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said hesitantly. "I'm sorry to just show up. I'm Emma Peterson. I think Riley is my half-brother." The trowel fell from my hands. "I don't understand," I said, though a cold feeling was spreading through my chest. Emma pulled out an envelope. "My mom died last year. Cancer. Before she passed, she told me the truth about my father. She said his name was Riley Hartwell, that they had a brief relationship 26 years ago when he was in college. She never told him about me. She thought he wouldn't want to know." She handed me a photo. A young woman with dark hair, smiling at the camera, holding a baby. Written on the back, "Emma 3 months old." "I did a DNA test," Emma continued. "One of those ancestry ones. It matched me with someone named Riley Hartwell as a close relative, possibly a sibling or parent. When I researched him, I found his photo. He looks just like my mom described him. I stared at this young woman who might be my granddaughter, studied her face for traces of Riley, of Tom, of myself. They were there, the shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. "Does Riley know?" I asked. "I tried to contact him, but I couldn't get through. His phone number's disconnected and he's not on social media anymore. So I thought maybe you could help." I invited her inside my mind, reeling. We sat in the living room and Emma told me her story. Her mother, Sarah Peterson, had been a grad student at Columbia when she met Riley. A brief romance that ended when she found out she was pregnant. She never told Riley, convinced he was too young and too focused on his career to want a child. "Mom raised me alone," Emma said. "She was a teacher. We didn't have much, but we were happy. She never spoke badly about Riley, just said he was young and it wasn't the right time." "What do you want from Riley?" I asked carefully. "Nothing," Emma said quickly. "I'm not looking for money or anything. I wanted to meet him, to know where I came from. My mom was an only child and her parents died before I was born. I don't have any family. When I found out I had a father, maybe siblings, cousins, grandparents," she looked at me hopefully, "I just wanted to know them." My heart broke for her. This girl who'd done nothing wrong but was about to walk into the middle of a disaster. "Emma," I said gently, "there's something you should know about Riley. Something that might make you reconsider wanting to know him." I told her everything. The attempted fraud, the forgeries, the trial. I watched her face fall with each revelation. "Oh," she said quietly when I finished. That's not what I expected." "I'm sorry," I said. "I wish I could introduce you to the son I thought I raised, but that man, I don't know if he exists anymore." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Hartwell, my mom always told me that people are more than their worst mistakes, that everyone deserves a chance to be better. Maybe Riley needs to know he has a daughter. Maybe that would give him a reason to change. The optimism of youth. The belief that love could fix anything. Maybe, I said. But Emma, you need to protect yourself. Riley is in a bad place right now. He's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. Will you at least tell him about me after the trial? I thought about it, about what it would mean for Riley to know he had a 25-year-old daughter, a daughter who'd grown up without him. Another failure to add to his list. But maybe Emma was right. Maybe it would give him something to fight for beyond himself. I'll tell him, I promised, after the trial. But Emma, I can't promise how he'll react. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. That's all I ask. She left me her contact information and a letter she'd written to Riley. I held it after she left this envelope that contained a truth Riley didn't know, a granddaughter I didn't know I had. Life was so much more complicated than I'd ever imagined. That evening I told Sarah about Emma's visit. Jesus, Olivia, she breathed. Does it ever end with this family? Apparently not. I sipped my tea, feeling ancient. Should I tell Riley before the trial? Absolutely not, Sarah said firmly. This is a distraction he doesn't need, and frankly it could be seen as an attempt to manipulate the jury's sympathy. After the trial you can tell him, but not before. So Emma's letter went into my safe alongside Tom's will and my trust documents and all the evidence of Riley's crimes. One more secret in a family full of them. The week before the trial, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove to the cemetery where Tom was buried. His grave was in a quiet corner under an old oak tree. The headstone was simple. Thomas Hartwell, beloved husband and father, 1955-2020. I'd added beloved after much deliberation. It seemed important to note that he'd been loved, that his life had mattered beyond just the dates. I sat on the grass beside his grave, not caring that it was cold and damp from morning dew. Tom, I said aloud, feeling only slightly foolish. I don't know what to do. Our son, our boy, he's in so much trouble, and I'm the one who put him there. The wind rustled through the oak leaves. No answer, of course. Dead men don't speak. He tried to steal from me, to make me homeless, to destroy everything we built together. But he's still our son, still the boy we raised. How do I testify against him? How do I put him in prison? I wiped tears from my cheeks. You always knew what to do. You always had the answer. I need you to tell me, am I doing the right thing? Or am I just a bitter old woman who can't forgive her child's mistakes? The silence stretched. Then in my mind I heard Tom's voice as clearly as if he were sitting beside me. Liv, he'd say, there's a difference between mistakes and choices. Riley didn't make a mistake. He made a series of deliberate choices to hurt you, to steal from you. That's not the same thing. But he's our son, I'd argue. And you're my wife, the woman I spent my life loving and protecting. If I can't be there to protect you, then the law has to do it for me. Let it live, let the law do its job. I knew that conversation was one-sided, all in my head, but somehow it helped. I stood, brushed grass from my pants, and touched the cold stone of Tom's headstone. I love you, I whispered, and I'll do what you taught me. I'll tell the truth, no matter how much it hurts.